Whatever you tell me, Madam President. Just sit down.
Okay, I think we're all ready now, so we'll go ahead and get started this morning. I'm Kelly Bradbury, and this is our first congregational conversation in my term as president. If you like what you hear this morning, we're going to continue to provide monthly updates via in-person and by live stream. Sometimes it takes a moment for the live stream to get started, which is another reason for our longer bathroom break. The next congregational conversations will be on Sunday, August 4th, Sunday, September 8th, and Sunday, October 6th. Staff and lay leadership are also available to engage in conversation, so just be in touch if you have questions. This morning, I'll give you an update on the Wabash Democracy and Public Discourse Report, followed by a brief review and history of our capacity report from 2019. And then Jenny Terry, our treasurer, will go over the latest numbers with you, and then we'll end with a building update from John Kraler. And as a collective, we may preemptively answer some of the questions that you have. So we're going to have a time for questions after all of us speak. So after John gives his update. So that's sort of the schedule for this morning. So to start, let's remind ourselves of our mission statement. St. Peter's United Church of Christ is a welcoming community, sharing God's love with our world and finding the Spirit in life. Today and in the months that come, we're focusing on what it means to be St. Peter's while we continue to be away from our building, and this is our defining mission that brings us all together and makes us the people of St. Peter's. In recent years, we've returned to our mission statement and worked to ensure that our ministries reflect our mission statement. First, a quick history lesson. Back at the beginning of 2022, the Governance Council applied for and received a grant to partner with the Wabash Democracy and Public Discourse Initiative, or for the sake of my mouth, we're going to say WDPD from here on out. The grant included funding for 2 events, which were facilitated and analyzed by groups of undergraduate students from Wabash College. These WDPD events are designed to be mutually beneficial to both the students as well as the community that they're working with. The students design and lead the events. They develop skills in planning, facilitation, and review. The St. Peter's Governance Council saw this as an opportunity to begin productive conversations in our St. Peter's community. So the first WDPD, St. Peter's, I thought that was going to be easier, conversation took place in April 2023, and it centered around the topic of understanding and engaging accessibility. And as you know, the building fire in July 2023 surprisingly motivated us to quickly take action on many of the ideas discussed during that first WDPD conversation. After the fire, we found the second topic we had planned in the grant application, which focused on inclusion and identity, was no longer the most relevant, and we needed to pivot to a more pressing topic. So this past April 2024, WDPD facilitated a second event to begin discussing the current and future ministries and vision of St. Peter's. This topic was a diversion from the norm for the WDPD and the experience, and the report which resulted reflect that mismatch. It's likely true that the April 2024 event was more beneficial to the students than to those who participated from our congregation, but still, your leadership have found usefulness in the WDPD experience, and I'm here to share a few of the findings with you. I think, Paul, you can go to the next slide. Yeah. So, as you might remember, our conversation focused around 4 themes: worship, education, hospitality, and community service. Over 50 people were in conversation and saw the commitment of others who cared about their community. In the words of the WDPD facilitators, this deliberation has demonstrated that the positive attitudes and efforts of the church's leadership and dedicated members cannot be diminished. Furthermore, the WDPD students found that this deliberation demonstrates that future work will be largely about refining a wide array of initial ideas and continuing to define the dynamics of accessibility, inclusivity, and flexibility of both space and worship. Next slide, please. When participants discuss the future of, so the first theme was worship, and the quote that we received from the report was, when participants discuss the future use of the space and its connection to worship, two primary ideas emerged: flexibility and accessibility. In our leadership meetings, we call flexibility and accessibility critical success factors, and you'll see them across the bottom of each slide today. Our third critical success factor, sustainability, is also listed, which I'll get into in the second half of my remarks. Next slide, please. The next theme was education that we discussed, and the key takeaway is that there is a strong appetite for St. Peter's UCC to serve as a community space for continuing education in and beyond worship. We are all looking forward to being back in our building and using our new space to educate our children, youth, adults, and the wider community in creative ways. The next slide, you can guess, is going to be the next theme, which is the hospitality theme. Multiple groups referenced accessibility changes, such as the wheelchair accessible ramp, switching from pews to chairs, and other aspects of last year's conversation as a main component of creating a more hospitable worship and community space for the future of St. Peter's UCC. I was personally a bit relieved to see that we're getting this aspect of our common goals right, because as you'll hear from John, there's no turning back now. And then the final slide on this section was the community service theme. There was little consensus about specific programs that participants would like to pursue, but the conversations demonstrated an appetite for developing focused community service projects and priorities to make community service sustainable for the long-term future of the church. So, in conclusion, the WDPD April 2024 event reminded St. Peter's leadership of who we want to be as a congregation and took us back to the core of our mission statement. When staff and lay leadership discussed these findings, we also realized that they tied greatly to another experience in our past, the capacity building experience from 2021, so a few years back. So some more history. A capacity building team was assembled in 2021 when former Associate Pastor of Missions and Education, Becca Lockwood, announced that she had been called to a congregation in Massachusetts. This was the same time frame in which we were navigating the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, and both internal and external realities caused us to take a deeper look at our congregation with the hopes of strengthening our capacity for ministry. Perhaps the most lasting analysis from the capacity building team is the image of a balanced tabletop. And it's just as important today as it was then. In the Nonprofit Life Cycle Stage-Based Wisdom of Nonprofit Capacity book, that's the name of a book, the tabletop analogy is used to describe the importance of tending to the infrastructure which supports a congregation's ministries and mission. So at St. Peter's, our infrastructure includes 4 legs. The people, which the staff and congregation might be considered 2 parts of this leg. The governance, which is the overall structure and the constitution. The financials and facilities, which are the money, the building, and the property. And the systems and processes, so how things get done and policies. So these 4 legs serve to hold up our ministries and programs and worship, which are the tabletop. And what sits on top of our table is our mission, which is the flower pot. So when one of the legs is short or broken, the top of the table becomes unstable and the flower pot, or the mission, falls off. This is natural. Systems and organizations change. The balance of organizations shifts. One leg is strong while another is weak. This happens all of the time in organizations. It's almost expected. However, such imbalance is not sustainable. And that is what we are trying to understand and address for our St. Peter's congregation. Remember, sustainability is one of the critical success factors, along with accessibility and flexibility, that we are trying to achieve. Churches, and in this case, St. Peter's, can become so focused on fulfilling their mission and serving the community that they sometimes lose sight of the infrastructure that provides a sustainable foundation. There are all sorts of dire things that happen to unbalanced churches that are pointed out in the full capacity report. In our case, we felt that the capacity report came at the right time. The hiring of Dakota Roberts as Associate Pastor of Operations was a direct result of this work. At the time, with the right staff and lay leaders at the helm, we were responding intentionally to all that we had learned, and our table was starting to feel balanced. Over the past 3 years, since this report came out, we've had our share of capacity challenges. The pandemic affected our people leg because we had months where we couldn't be together. The systems leg had been affected by staff changes, most recently by the departure of Administrative Coordinator Lorianne Davis. The facilities and building leg was destroyed nearly completely and is obviously being replaced due to the fire. The ministry's programs worship leg has also been affected by the fire, perhaps most notably with the suspension of the preschool ministry and questions about future missions. So now we are entering a new season. Staff and lay leadership are confident that we will be able to stabilize our tabletop once again. Right now, we are focused on getting you back into our church building, our sacred space. Following that joyful return, we will spend intentional time returning to our mission statement, our critical success factors of accessibility, flexibility, and sustainability, and the wisdom of the capacity report to best nurture existing ministries and dream up new ones that'll carry us into this next season of St. Peter's. I think you can go to the next slide now. To be clear, leadership do not and cannot know of all the various uses of our facility when we return to our building. We do know that along with flexibility, accessibility, and sustainability, we will be looking at community needs, organizational passion, and capacity when continuing that conversation. Again, we will resume conversations regarding potential future ministries at some point in 2025, sometime after we are settled in our new building. So now we have the next slide, and I believe that's Jenny. Jenny is going to give you an update on financials.
Thanks, Kelly, and good morning, everybody. Yes, I'm Jenny Terry, serving as your treasurer. I'm going to give you an update on the financial leg of the table, and it's very strong. So first, some updates from when I was with you last at the Congregational meeting in June, and I have really great news to share with everybody in that there was a great response to our giving campaign, our general fund for this coming fiscal year after the meeting, and as a result, we're at $394,000 pledged to the general fund for next year, which was there was definitely a surge in some pledges that hadn't yet come forward to that point, along with everyone who had pledged up to that point to get us to that number. So again, thank you very much for your continued generosity to this congregation. It makes a huge difference for all of us in dealing with the day-to-day operations. Also, the 394 figure is more than we had pledged last year, so that's another wonderful fact that generosity in the congregation is growing. And of course, this is all on top of all the generosity that was committed to the Fire Recovery Fund. So it's really amazing, and I can, speaking for myself, it's beyond my wildest dreams when we started this about a year ago. So thank you, and yes, I agree. So yes, just a little bit more on the fire recovery campaign. You know, obviously our goal there was met and exceeded. We're now working with a budget of $629,000 due to the pledges, gifts, and grants that were committed to that campaign. So John's going to give us an update in a little bit to talk a little bit about how that money is, the plans for all of that. Talking about where we are currently, it means that right now we are not planning on taking out any kind of line of credit to finance the end of our renovations, which is really amazing, once again, that because the church has reserves and the generosity from the congregation to the fire recovery fund has also, people have given those gifts much sooner than we initially anticipated. So the gap that remains from the gifts that we've received versus pledged, we currently believe that we can cover with the church's existing reserves and the building fund that existed pre-fire to cover that, the gap between the 3-year period we provided for people paying pledges and when the construction costs will be incurred. So our cash position remains very good and our reserves are intact. So that's what I had to share. Oh, one other thing, we are, as part of the church's normal operations, we do periodically conduct a financial review, an external independent financial review of the church's finances, and we are in the beginning stages of planning for that. From a timing standpoint, it makes sense to try to have that occur when the construction is complete so that review can include also what has taken place in terms of the construction. So that's what I have to share with you today, and I'm going to call up John to take it from here. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Jenny. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to provide an update on 3 things: the remodeling, our contents replacement process, and then our timeline. I don't really have slides with words, but I have some slides, some pictures. There we go. Just to give you a sense of what's going on at the building. This looks to me like the fellowship hall, probably a couple of weeks ago after they had gotten the drywall up. Let's look at the next one and see what we see. Oh, this is a gentleman doing the drywall, and I took this picture really to show you this gentleman because it's kind of amazing, because they kind of strap those stilts onto their legs and then just work all day. Like, just all day long doing that. And then you think, that's amazing enough. And then I caught them one day last week going up on a ladder with the stilts on.
Oh my gosh.
It's like Cirque du Soleil, you know? Yeah, it's just amazing. Okay, next slide. Let's see what else we got. Oh, here we are in classroom 11. On the right there, those cabinets, this is kind of that little kitchenette that has always been in classroom 11. Years ago, once upon a time, we called it the parlor. So those cabinets have been replaced. Let's see what's next. And this is the kitchen. Some of the new cabinets are showing up in the kitchen itself. So I think this might be the first new thing that's a new color or a new object that we have installed in the church. So that's pretty exciting. Are there any more slides? One more. Here we are. So this is the new crying baby or toddler or otherwise standing out in the hallway watching and listening to the service from that hallway where the coat rack used to be. So that's the new window that allows you to see into the sanctuary, and there will be a speaker above your head so you can hear what's going on there and see with your own eyes what's going on there. Is that it for slides? That's it? Thank you. I don't have any more slides, so I'll dive right in. I had that dream again last night where Winston Churchill is yelling at me and saying, only a lazy man delivers a lengthy and diffuse speech. So what I did this morning was I deleted every third word. So could be a little choppy. So first of all, the remodeling. Jenny mentioned how generous you all were with your pledges. We have more in contributions and pledges than we asked for, so that is fantastic. It's also, we think, going to be absolutely necessary in terms of the totality of the project that we're looking at. Our partnership with Crossroads Restoration, that's the company that's doing all of this work, both fire restoration and the remodeling work, has turned out to be at least as financially synergistic as we expected it to be. What does that mean? In other words, we are saving money by getting them to do our remodeling work at the same time that they're doing the fire restoration work that the insurance company is paying for. So, good news on that front. There are some items that we did not contract with Crossroads to do, at least not yet. Some of those are still being explored and defined, and some of those have turned out to be complex in many different ways, at least in terms of just deciding exactly what to do and how to do it. Those categories you might remember are entry control and security, fire and smoke detection, monitoring, parking lot repair, some technology improvements, audio-visual improvements both within the building and for live streaming. So for each of those items on the list, there are choices to be made, but some of these things are locked in, others are still being developed. So for example, the smoke alarm system has to be installed right now as we rebuild the building. So we have agreed upon the scope there and the price there. Same for the parking lot, but that's because of the season. It needs to be done before it turns cold this fall. So some of these things are done. Others, we're still kind of shaping them individually. And then the most important thing is we have to make that all fit within the overall budget. The good news is we are confident we can do that. In other words, we are not going to ask for more money. We think we can get the list of things that needs to be done for the amount of money that you saw on that slide earlier that we have to work with. We don't have the final details on everything yet, so that is targeted for our September meeting here. And then we will explain how each of these things is defined and what we will achieve with each of these things and how much we'll need to invest in each. Number two, the contents replacement process. We said a long time ago that the decision-making process for contents replacement would chronologically follow the focus on the design for the building itself. It did, but it is now pretty much done. So I do want to explain to you some of the details of that process and want to make sure that everybody understands one key element, a key decision that came out of that process for utilizing the money from the insurance company. The big headline is we will use nearly all of the money from the insurance company for contents replacement at this time for congregational operations as we prepare to reopen the church this fall. We think this makes sense. We have talked it over with the Governance Council, and so now my challenge is to crisply summarize for you the key elements of our discussions over the last few months that led us to this conclusion. I do want to be clear. We're talking here only about money from the insurance company and only for contents replacement. So a really completely different bucket from my first topic, which was focused on the building itself and your money, your financial contributions. In thinking about the items to be purchased for the interior of the building, the furniture, the fixtures, the equipment, we have followed those same guiding principles that we have told you about before and you've seen on the slides today. Flexibility over time, over a week, over a decade, and for varied purposes, sustainability, and accessibility. So quickly, a refresher. What are contents? The insurance company often uses an analogy. If you turned the building upside down and shook it, everything that falls out, because it's not attached, would be contents. So this is lots of stuff, from big to small, right? It includes the new altar in the remodeled sanctuary. It includes the pew chairs, regular chairs, tables, desks, desktop computers, and so on, right on down the list to staplers, toys, books, pens, pencils, reams of copier paper, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things we said months ago was we wanted the building to look like one cohesive whole, like it was designed and furnished all at once in a thoughtful way. So there will be no hodgepodge look to the building when we move in, at least not on the first day. And this wonderful sub-team of our design team that has been researching and selecting items for the contents replacement has also, I would say, kind of taken it up just a notch. Not too much. You're not going to feel that, there is any kind of a sense of a gold-plated European cathedral feeling at St. Peter's when we move back in. This is not that St. Peter's. So they're not wasting money or buying luxurious stuff. However, they are trying to buy furniture, for example, that you might say is in the commercial catalog instead of in the residential catalog. Again, not necessarily the Fortune 500 company part of the catalog, but kind of the nonprofit and churches part of the commercial catalog, if you will. So it's good stuff, but at a good price. They're also adding some things, right? There are some spaces in the church that we kind of didn't really have before. The best example is that expanded narthex. There will be gathering and seating areas in that space. All the rooms throughout the building will be furnished to at least a basic degree, and the rooms that we anticipate using a lot right away will be set up for their appropriate individual use. So we will have some meeting space, some office space, some small group discussion space, some technology space, some storage space, some music space, some space for the youngest amongst us, and so on. As Kelly mentioned, as a congregation, we're still in discernment about various aspects of our internal and external ministries. This was true pre-fire. Certainly it remains true. There are many items that will be shared between what you might call the Monday through Friday ministries and programs element of things and the Sunday worship and weekend programs element of things. As one quick aside, I should tell you how contents replacement with the insurance company works. This has evolved over the past year for us several times. I'll save you the long story and just jump to the end. The insurance company has determined the cost of buying new for every item, every content item that they agree was not salvageable because of the damage to the building. We have been given, however, the flexibility to purchase the items that we believe are necessary for the church to reopen in broad categories rather than one item at a time. So the categories of furniture, fixtures and equipment, electronics and technology, etc. But we only get reimbursed by the insurance company when we actually purchase those items and show them the receipt. So back to understanding our approach. The recommendation that we talked over with the Governance Council this past week was utilize the vast majority of this budget available from the insurance company for contents replacement specifically for the items that are needed for the church to reopen, for church programs and for shared space refurnishing, which means that there will not be a big pool of money sitting there waiting to be utilized by any future ministry of the church when we get around to deciding what that ministry should be and what it needs. So what is it that makes that proposal make sense to us? I'll mention 4 points. A, it's practical, based on the calendar. Reflecting again on what Kelly told you, the timeline, the discernment process needed to determine what ministries the church will want to support in the future kind of demands it. We need to be done with our insurance reimbursement processes by next spring or summer at the latest, and thus we do not have time or capacity to completely determine all of the ministries and hire any additional staff if necessary for a new or returning ministry and make good decisions about what kind of equipment or fixtures or furniture is needed for that. B, it makes strategic sense. It kind of makes sense to get the church up and running and make good economic decisions about the contents replacement required to do so. In other words, you could say, let's have a strong rebirth of the church building for the church itself as a first step. C, the unknown future. There's a terrific variability in the possibilities for a future ministry in terms of exactly what and how much they might need. On one extreme, if we decide to rent some of the rooms to an existing ministry program, they might bring their own stuff with them. They might even pay us rent. On the other extreme, we might invent some new ministry program from the ground up, and somebody would have to figure out exactly what is needed in each of those rooms to make that ministry work. And finally, D, we also think it's an acceptable approach to take with regard to the future ministries, because the church, in a very real sense, has money in the bank. Money in the bank that could support those future needs. We undertook this entire remodeling project without dipping into the long-held reserves for the building that were already there. And then we had a great operational fiscal year last year, and we actually added money to the savings account. And the recent success of our normal fundraising campaign, as well as the remodeling fundraising campaign, have demonstrated that this church will get behind a financial need after the congregation has decided that it is the right thing to do. So, to reiterate, the plan will be to refurnish the church now with the insurance money, and in the future, as ministries are defined, to utilize savings or raise new money, if needed, to support those ministries. All right, my last item, 3, question I get the most: when are we moving back home? Kelly? OCA, that's right. Construction is proceeding, as you saw in those pictures. The insulation is done, the drywall is done, kitchen cabinets are halfway installed. They'll be done by the end of the week. The grid for the ceiling, the Armstrong ceiling, is going to start tomorrow. And so it is really starting to look now like the rebuilding phase is finally underway, as opposed to the cleaning stuff up and tearing stuff out phases. So we are currently anticipating that we will be able to have the vast majority of that actual construction stuff done, completed by early November. Then we'll spend a few weeks moving things in, the organ, the audio-visual and technology systems, and we do have a schedule of events week by week that gets us to that date and that makes us optimistic. So all of that is with a goal of holding church services for the Advent and Christmas seasons in our home sanctuary. So to be very specific and kind of repeat that, we have a goal. We will have our homecoming service on Sunday, November 24th, which is the Sunday before Thanksgiving and the beginning of Advent. That Beaven hour is the applause line.
That's true.
There are things that could delay us, so I was told to say many times, this is our goal and we'll keep you up to date. But it is a serious goal and we think it's feasible. So that's what we're aiming for. Okay, I think we're ready for questions.
For the liturgical police, Advent 1 is the next Sunday.
Oh, thank you.
Okay? So don't get cranky about that. It would be a Thanksgiving service. Then we hope to decorate for Advent and Christmas after the service. And then the first week of Advent would be the first Sunday in December. Okay? Who has questions? I have the mic. Anything that was said? Kelly, Jenny, John.
This is not a serious comment. Why does Jenny get to share all the good news? I don't believe I had that honor in 5 years.
But you set her up. We keep saying that. You set her up.
Yeah, and Diane, I will say, when I saw the mic was going to you, I whispered to Jenny, this question is going to be for you, ha ha ha. Thanks for staying for that long-winded update from all of us, and thanks for celebrating all of this wonderful news with us this morning, especially about the date the goal of the date of November 24th for having our worship service at St. Peter's. Have a good week.
You too.